love of food. Today we're going to be making something that is very kid friendly. This is something that I made with Nicole when she was little all the time. And we're using ground beef. So you guessed it, maybe meatballs. Kids love to roll those meatballs and make the tiny little balls and watch them turn into something once you cook them. So I'm going to go ahead and show you my ingredients here, and we're going to get started. We're going to make these in no time, fast, food-friendly activity for you and your kids. And by the way, it's delicious. Okay, so we're back. Let's go ahead and first put our ground meat in a pan. And what I'm going to be doing, this is about a pound. It could be a little more than a pound, but I'm going to say go with like a pound of meat. And the most important ingredient that we're going to be putting in our meatballs is this grated cheese. Now, I didn't use just any grated cheese. I grated this myself from some Parmigiano Reggiano, so it smells fabulous. If you are just making these for the kids, they'd be happy with that stuff that comes from the store, but I like to just grate my own. So let's go ahead and add our cheese. We added 1 cup of cheese to a pound of meatballs. Now, a lot of people think that meatballs contain a lot of breadcrumbs, and that's the mistake that most people make. So what I'm going to show you right now is for every cup of cheese, I'm only using a 1/3 cup of breadcrumbs. So it's not as much breadcrumb as you might think. Now, in my house, we like garlic, so I'm going to be putting in a tablespoon of garlic. Again, if you're making these for the kids, they may not like that much garlic, so you might want to go ahead and just cut back on that. But I'm going to go ahead and put in a whole tablespoon of garlic. We're going to be using a tablespoon of parsley. Now, I'm using dried parsley only because I don't have any fresh parsley available to me right now. We're in the middle of winter here in the South, so my parsley has passed. But if you want to use fresh parsley, I would recommend it. But today we went with the dried, and it will be fine. We're going to add in a teaspoon of salt. We're going to add in a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. We're going to put in a 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder. If you don't have onion powder, you could use out onion salt, but just cut back on the amount of salt you use. And we're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of dried garlic. All right, so from there, one other ingredient we need to mix this up is going to be egg. So I have gone ahead and just mixed up 1 egg. So I just beat 1 egg. Now, what I'm going to show you is that this is likely going to take 2 eggs, and that's okay too. So you got to get used to working with your hands if you're going to make these meatballs. So what you want to do is you want to be able to mix all the ingredients without making the meat too tough. So what we do is we just kind of move it around in the pan very lightly, not squeezing it yet. Just kind of move it around till all our ingredients start to come together. Now, I knew that I was likely going to need another egg. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the egg in there without even having it be conventional. How do I know I need another egg? See how, and I'm going to let that just come back. There we go. See how dry this is? I want this to be moister so that my meatball sticks together. So let's go ahead and just put in a 2nd egg. And this one, I'm not even going to beat. I'm just going to drop it right in. And we're going to move it around, and it's going to mix up just fine. So now I'm going to show you the consistency that we're looking for in our meatball. So now we can start squeezing just a little bit to see about our consistency, and we can see that our meatball is now pulling away from the sides of our pan, which is showing me that it's moist enough, and you don't want it too wet. So if you have any liquid in the bottom of this, you're going to want to add some more cheese and breadcrumb, and then we can just start to go ahead and roll. Now notice, I'm not going to handle these too much. If you're making these with the kids, they're going to want to handle them a lot, and that's okay. Just know your meatball is not going to be as tender as you would like it to be. The more you handle the meat, the less tender it's going to be. Believe it or not, it's kind of a different a concept than, working with some of the other kinds of meat. So we're just going to go ahead and roll them a few times just until we get them formed into a little ball. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue to roll my meatballs. And the key to this is try and keep them as consistent as possible. Now, they don't have to be perfect. Again, if you're making these with the kids, which I highly suggest that you do, then don't worry about them all being perfect, right? Because the whole lesson with kids is cooking should be fun, and we don't want to make them afraid and think that everything has to be perfect, because we all know it's not a perfect world, and cooking is such a great example of that. It can be done not perfect and still be fabulous. All right, so I'm going to finish rolling these, and I'll be back in just a few minutes to show you how I'm going to cook these. There are two methods that you can use. You can fry them in a pan, or you can bake them in the oven, and both ways come out just as good. All right, so we'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks for watching For the Love of Food. All right, so here you can see we've got our meatballs, and the method I chose to use was bake them in the oven. I'm going to bake these in the oven at 350 for approximately 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll check them and see how they're coming along. If you're going to plan to eat these meatballs right away, you're going to want to make sure that they're cooked all the way through. I am planning to use these later for a sauce, so mine will not have to be cooked all the way through because they're going to go into a very hot pasta sauce and be sitting in there for maybe a half a day, so they will continue to cook in there. But regardless, even if you were going to use these for sauce, I always cook them a little bit first so that they firm up and don't fall apart inside the sauce. All right, I'll be back in just a few minutes to show you what these look like when they are done.